Welcome to today's video, guys. I'm going to be showing off 3 types of drones and going into detail about what they're best used for and what best suits you if you're new to getting into this hobby and you're wondering what your first drone should be. So if you find this kind of content interesting, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like the video. It's greatly appreciated. So let's get into it. So one of the biggest things to consider when you're looking to get your first drone is, in my opinion, the noise level that's created by them. So the first one I'm going to be taking a look at, showing off, is this little guy right here. This is a Tinywhoop. I have a B-Brain light board on a Beta FPV 65S frame. These are relatively cheap to build your own or to buy pre-built. This one runs off of a 1S LiPo. 1Ss are relatively cheap compared to the bigger batteries that you'll run into in the hobby. So I'll play a clip real quick, flying around in the house, and then we'll go ahead and talk about this one. So Tinywhoops are great, especially flying inside. If you're looking to just race around inside your home, these are really great. They're pretty quiet. These are brushed motors, which are a little bit quieter than brushless. They don't last as long, unfortunately, so you have to consider that too if you want to keep putting the money into new motors. These ones have lasted me a bit, so they're not too bad. With Tinywhoops, they're very small. You can fly these outside depending on the wind. You know, as long as the wind outside is pretty calm, you can get away with flying these. Tinywhoops are really good flying stable. Most people who race these actually fly them stable. You can run these in acro mode. Depending on the power output that you get from some of them, you could run into some prop wash issues. Which isn't a big deal if you can learn how to fly them a little bit better. They just don't handle prop wash too well. But all in all, I would actually highly suggest this for a first FPV drone. If you're new to the hobby, these are a blast to fly around indoors. You can create all kinds of obstacles, and I do that a lot when I'm bored, and it is a really good time. Tinywhoops can be a little bit more difficult to work on compared to a full-size 5-inch mini quad. Everything is very small on these, and this actually isn't the right power lead. This is actually, I believe, a Futaba connector that I broke off since I ruined the old plug and soldered this on here to run my 1Ss off of. Not recommended, but it works for me. Next up, we have what most people would call just a camera drone. This is the DJI Mavic Pro. It's very modular. It folds up into itself, which is really cool. It makes it very portable. And it's got a 4K camera that's gimbal stabilized. And now something like this is really good for if you want to just get up in the air and take some really good pictures or video. You don't want to worry about trying to keep the drone under control too much. These are GPS stabilized, very, very easy to fly for a beginner, and very useful. I use this one for my real estate photography business for doing exteriors, and it has not let me down yet. Now with drones of this nature, one thing to consider is they are very, very hard to work on compared to a mini quad or race drone. If you're not comfortable repairing these yourself, you'll end up sending it in to DJI or somebody else, and it'll cost you a lot of money to get these fixed. I've only had to repair this once and replaced the gimbal cable on this guy, and it was a pain in the ass. So I don't recommend trying to work on these yourself if you're not used to working on smaller electronics. Now another thing with drones like these is they're very self-proprietary, meaning you can't just swap different parts into these like you could a custom-built race drone. One battery is pretty expensive. I don't have the cost on hand, but I will post those in the description if you're curious about that. These batteries can add up to a lot of money. They will last you a while if you take care of them. Props you have to get from DJI. There are some aftermarket suppliers that make these. I wouldn't advise trying them, honestly. You don't know what could happen. These drones are very finicky, so I would stick with the OEM products that they came with. Now the noise level on these is a lot louder than the Tinywhoop. People will definitely hear this one flying in the air, so that's something to consider if you are trying to keep a lower profile and you don't want to be upsetting people around you. The other upside to a drone like this is it does have obstacle avoidance sensors that'll kind of dummy proof you from crashing into a tree. But like I said, this is a great drone if you don't want to have to worry about maneuvering the drone around and keeping it stable. It'll do all that for you. You basically just tell it where to go and it goes, and you take some really good pictures. Everything is super stable. Like all three of these, they have their advantages and disadvantages. And last but not least, we got a 5-inch mini quad. This is a custom built one, and this runs off of 6S LiPo batteries. And as you heard from the clip, these are a lot louder than the last two that I showed you. Mini quads are very fast, very fun, very easy to fix if you know how to solder. If you don't know how to solder, you could always look up some videos. It's really not that hard. It just takes some patience and practice. I highly advise that you jump into a simulator first, and I have a couple videos of some simulators that I did some reviews on, so you can check those out. The reason I say to jump into a simulator first rather than jumping into a 5-inch is these are very fast. This one's probably about 650 grams. It's got a decent weight to it, but these propellers will definitely tear some shit up. You do not want to fly these around people if you don't know what you're doing. Now, not to scare you away from them, they are very, very, very fun. These are great, great drones. And the good thing about jumping into a simulator first is you can get yourself prepared, and it's very cheap. All you do is get a transmitter, something like this, and you can fly on the computer and get used to all the controls before you get something like this, and it'll be a very, very smooth transition into it, because most likely you're going to start out with a Tinywhoop and you're going to want to work your way up to this, and the cost becomes pretty big when you buy more drones. I mean, it's common sense. Nothing's cheap, and with the price of chips and semiconductors going up, these have also inflated in price. All the parts are becoming harder to get and a lot more expensive. So keep that into mind too when you're first getting into this hobby. Now that said, with drones like these, you will mostly be flying in acro mode or full manual, and they are capable of doing flips, flying upside down, diving through gaps. They're very acrobatic, which makes for some awesome dynamic footage if you got an HD cam attached to it, and definitely a way to impress your friends, family, show off some of that stuff. Now with mini quads, they're very easy to work on. You basically just pop this top plate off and you got your boards exposed in there, your ESC, flight controller, VTX, it's all right there. So going into a safety standpoint, because that's something you also want to ask yourself if you're new to this, is everybody wants to be as safe as possible. Otherwise things go bad and people get hurt. Obviously the Tinywhoop out of the three of these is going to be the safest one. You got ducks on it, it's very small. I got it caught in my wife's hair once, which we got over that. She was good, we didn't have to cut it off. Something like a Mavic Pro or a 5-inch race drone, these can be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. And you got to make sure that you keep yourself safe and everybody else around you. You are responsible. Now as far as cost goes, everything can get expensive. Now with a camera drone like this from DJI, brand new, this was running around $1,200 for the Flymore kit, and I gave you extra batteries, carrying case, props, and all that. And it also comes with, they all come with a controller. What's cool about these two is you put your own receiver in them, or you buy them with a receiver. They usually run off of OpenTX, or you get a controller that runs OpenTX, and something like this. That controller will control both of these drones. This has a FR Sky receiver in it, and this one has TBS Crossfire. And I have both of these bound to it. I have 3 other drones that are also bound to that controller, so it's really great. Bind all your drones to one controller and you're good to go. So something like this though, like I said, $1,200 for a Flymore combo. This costed me about $350 to build, but then you got to factor in buying the batteries, which are about $32 a piece. The controller, you're looking at $150 on the low end. Then you also got to buy a charger, extra props. You're going to be going through a lot of props, especially if you start off with something like this. Even with the Tinywhoop, I've broken props on this. You crash into a wall hard enough and these little guys will just shatter. So going back on everything that I was talking about earlier, you need to ask yourself, you know, some certain questions when you're looking into what your first drone is going to be. Cost is a big one. Noise, safety, what you're going to use it for. Like I said, you want pictures and smooth video, something that stabilizes yourself. I highly recommend this. If you're looking to have some fun, go fast and get some dynamic footage, you got this. And if you're looking to just rip around indoors and have a great time, I highly recommend a Tinywhoop. These are awesome. I've crashed this thing into a pot of water, dried it off, and it still runs. I've had this one for about 2.5 years now. So I hope everything that I explained in this video helped some of you make a decision or help you out with some questions that you had yourself. If you found this video helpful in any way, please subscribe, hit that like button. It's greatly appreciated. And leave a comment down below if you got any other questions. I'd love to help you guys out and answer whatever I can. Hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Have a great rest of your day and take it easy.